Are we seeing the first signs of the end of what we all refer to as the golden age of guitar gear? I've been doing YouTube for 8 years and I have over 600 demos on this channel, all related to guitar, amplifiers, and pedals. And for the last 2 years, I've been noticing a lack of interest from the audience, meaning you, but I'm also noticing that the industry is having a shift. So I'm not trying to be clickbaity. I'm not trying to stir up the pot for no reason. There's some things that I think we can all observe. I'm going to be pointing them out in this video. So if you're interested in that, my name is Jonathan. This is TL Toneworks, and let's dive right into it. Now, if you just want to jump to any section of this podcast episode, you can use the chapters. Everything is timestamped. For those of you who are like, what are you talking about? Like, what is this golden age of guitar gear? What does that even mean? Personally, I didn't coin the term. It's something that's been said for a few years now. The first time I took notice was with Rhett Shull. I think he had done an entire episode on how we are in the golden age of gear, meaning that right now you could go out and buy a guitar pedal for like maybe $30 and it would sound good. It wouldn't sound like a $30 pedal. It would be something you could gig with. Now, the long-term reliability of those pedals, I really can't say. Actually, I haven't played in years with a band, but when I used to, I had some boutique stuff and very few affordable stuff. I think the only affordable brand I used to use back in the day was Dan Electro. But since then, we have Behringer, Joyo, NewX, Sonic Cake. I mean, there's all these different companies out there. And this means that you and I, as consumers, we can go out, buy beginner stuff, intermediate, or pro level, and they're all actually really good, starting from the bottom up. And the gap that used to exist between the really affordable stuff and intermediate is getting narrow. And the gap between the intermediate and the pro stuff is also getting a bit narrower, meaning that we as consumers get to benefit from having better gear. But we're not the only ones benefiting from this. Music stores, if they're selling some of those really affordable pedals, guitars, and amps, they make way more money typically on those than they will with Gibsons and Fenders. So everyone has been benefiting from what we all refer to as the golden age of gear. But we're seeing signs now that something is changing. So that's some of the companies, and some of these companies were major players, but there's also brick and mortar stores who just went out of business. We had Sam Ash, who went out of business in 2024. There was GAC in the United Kingdom that went out of business. There was PMT. There was Bax Music in the Netherlands and Belgium. So I lived in Belgium for 4 years, and Bax were very competitive, trying to stay afloat. Sadly, they went out of business as well. Now, another company that closed down that wasn't on this list is Steve's Music. They were big in Montreal for decades. I remember going in there in the mid-90s with $2,000. I got a early 70s Rickenbacker. I had a reverb tank, a Fender reverb tank from, I think was like the mid 60s, somewhere around there, or early 60s. I had a whole lot of gear that I went in there and purchased. If I can, I'm going to try to retrieve a picture that I have here of the gear I bought at Steve's Music for $2,000. This was a shit ton of money back in the early 90s, but I could afford it. And that gear today, some of those articles in that collection are worth more than what I paid for the whole lot. So yeah, times have changed, but yeah, Steve Music was big in Montreal. They were super, super cool store. And that one kind of hit close to home. When you see that, you go, shit, man, I remember going in there and they were iconic. And this is just how it affects me as a Canadian right here. So imagine like Bax Music and, PMT and all those other companies that just close up shop. It hits people in a different way. Lets you know something is going on. But that's just the brick and mortar shop and some of the gear related companies. What are the other signs? One of them is analog companies that are known for something very specific, diversifying what they're doing. One of them would be EHX that recently came out with plugins of their pedals. You would think like, why are they going in the plugin realm? Well, one of the reasons is that a lot of people are going digital. So it makes sense for them to adapt, because if they keep doing just pedals and pedals and pedals, and everyone is kind of moving away from just typical pedal products and they're going to companies that are doing plugins, if your favorite pedal company or your favorite guitar amp company is doing digital versions of what they do, that means they can tap into another market, which is super smart. There's also JHS Pedals that has done the same kind of thing. They've done digital versions of some of their best products. I think the one that is really going in with the whole concept of digital products would be Brian Wampler over at Wampler Pedals. You could see Brian Wampler advertising courses, which is a bit different than what the others are doing. So Brian Wampler is giving courses on not only on how the circuits of pedal work, but how you can build your own pedals. So he's thinking forward. He's really implementing some of the new technologies at hand so that he can stay relevant, which he's adapting super well. And I think he's really showing the way forward for a lot of companies. You also have Vertex Effects, who are doing tone courses. We've seen YouTubers that do that. I've mentioned Rhett Shull. He does that where he has courses where he shows you how to dial in pedals and how to get the best sound. Vertex Effects kind of does the same thing, but we may be seeing more companies going in that direction. So they're not omitting and, getting rid of the analog stuff. They're just adapting, trying to stay relevant with the ever-changing economy and the new technologies that are coming out. Not everyone's caught on yet, but many companies are looking at alternative ways to tap into the market that is not buying the super expensive stuff. So if you want every single pedal from EHX because you love them, but you're playing with modelers and you can't have a stack of pedals like what I have in that corner, perhaps having digital versions of them at a fraction of the cost makes more sense. Now, the following sign is actually quite interesting. It's all the companies who are saying, I'm done with the old model. Now I'm going to be selling directly to the customers. For the longest time, it was always with the same kind of system where you would have the manufacturer making the product, it would go to a distributor and then to a retailer, and then the retailer would sell to the customer. It's been like that for ages, and it's like that in most industries. However, now we're seeing a shift where companies are saying, you know what, that margin that I'm losing here, I need to recoup somewhere. So what they're doing is instead of selling to your major box like Long & McQuade, Sweetwater, etc., they're selling directly to you. As far as I can see, there's a few companies who've adopted fully this model where you have the people going online to the web store for that company, buying the product directly, and the company ships to the customer. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you have companies like Chase Bliss who are doing this. There's Bigfoot Engineering. Recently, we've seen Mythos Pedals do the same thing. Zach made a video where he talked about how he had to let a bunch of people go. I think it's him and his wife taking care of building the pedals and shipping out to customers. There's companies out there who have also taken a different approach. We've seen companies that are going far less to events like NAMM or Guitar Summit in Germany and things like that. So they're not going to those places because they don't really need the distribution in the same sense as before. They don't need the retailers as before. So we've seen Gibson open up stores where you can go to the Gibson store itself. I think Fender has a very similar model as well. So they're kind of capturing a higher margin than before because they're selling more directly. They're not having to deal with third-party individuals to sell and distribute what they have. We've also seen a sort of hybrid system where you have companies where if you go to JHS Pedals, Wampler, Electro Harmonics, or Earthquaker devices, companies like that, they're still in the big box stores, but you can also buy directly from them. So oftentimes they're going to have pre-sales. You can buy directly from those companies. What this means is that we're seeing the companies trying to kind of disturb the way things have been for a long time in order to survive. So they're getting rid of the old model, trying to adapt. And I mean, good for them because we want these companies to stick around for a long time. And seeing companies die off when they were good, they made something really awesome like G&L basses, for example, which I loved. I had an L2000 back like 10 years ago and I stupidly sold it. I've been looking for one for ages now. So seeing these companies get rid of the old model and instead of having, as I said, the manufacturer to distributor to retailer then to customer. Now it's the manufacturer is going to customer. They build a product, they can sell it directly to you. Some of them have hybrid system. What I think this means is that there's more of a margin compression. I'm not going to try to get super nerdy because I'm not that smart to begin with, but they're trying to cut out the places that are eating in a lot of their profit, because some of these companies haven't adapted to inflation yet, meaning that in other spheres, when inflation hits, companies will bump up 5%, 10% over like 2-3 years. So that way you don't feel like, geez, it went up $100 all of a sudden. What's going on? But a lot of guitar companies, they don't do that, whether it's the amplifiers, the pedals, or whatever. Since they haven't increase their price over time, a lot of them are trying to find other ways to recoup that money. They obviously have to consider the rising cost of still functioning with the old system. I don't know if this is going to work, but at some point in this podcast, I would love to get some of the people from the industry and maybe like pick their brains, try to get like how they're adapting to this whole change. So if that's possible, I'll try to make that happen in the future. One of the most clear signs that something is happening is just look at the state of the world. From an economic perspective, you have everything going on with oil and Iran. You have tariffs, and there's also inflation. Now, there's a lot of people that are pretending that there is no inflation, but believe me, when you and I go to our local grocery shop and we come back with 5 bags and $300 later, there is inflation. So that is having an impact on how we spend, but it's also having an impact on how companies can actually build product and then sell them and stay afloat. So if all these things are converging to have a big impact on not only the industry, but on the consumer, that means that you can build as much as you want. But if you have to bump up the price and the person at the other end that would typically buy your product is saying, I'm sorry, but I need to feed my family, that is not a fun place to be for them and for us. Well, I mean, we have all the abundance of gear and the used market. There's a lot of stuff you can purchase. But for these companies, if they want to stay afloat, they have to figure out how to adapt. And earlier we talked about some companies going with digital products so that they can diversify what they have. We talked about the new business models that they're trying to adapt in order to stay afloat. But then at the end, inflation, tariffs, and the price of oil, all of this is just kind of compounding. You could do deep research. Maybe you're smarter than I am when it comes to economy, but there's a sign that there's something moving. And even if we're not the smartest when it comes to saving money, when you start to see how it hits you in terms of your bills on the regular, you start to question whether you actually need another tube screamer or whether you need another guitar. You might want it, but can you afford it? Now, if you look at any of the available data for what is going on with current sales, you're going to see that it's decreasing. Now, I pulled up some data here to kind of help us understand, but we're seeing that Guitar Center is in distress. So they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in November of 2020. This carried over with a $1.3 billion in debt with a plan to reduce that figure by approximately $800 million. So as of late 2022, the revenues were approximately $2.6 billion on a trailing 12-month basis. But Moody's was downgrading their credit, and projection for 2024 were based on the optimistic assumption that consumer demand would grow back to pre-pandemic level. From what we can see, it hasn't. So since 2020, Guitar Center has shuttered 111 locations, including 4 in early 2025, leaving 167 active stores as of March 2026. Guitar Center, being a major player, well, they had to file for bankruptcy and they had to shut down almost half of the stores that they had across America. If we look at Sweetwater, here it says that Sweetwater had the most dramatic pandemic era rise and is now clearly in retreat. Sweetwater achieved $1.57 billion in sales in 2022, revenue growth of 9.5% year over year, and the third consecutive year exceeding $1 billion in revenue. By 2024, Sweetwater's online store revenue had fallen to approximately $764.9 million, down 0 to 5% from the previous year, For 2025, projections expected a further decline of 20 to 50. That's massive. That's two major American retailers. When it comes to Tomon, over in Europe, they are like the biggest distributor. They don't have a whole lot of available information that I can find by doing a Google search, but what I could find is that it says Tomon reached approximately 1.4 billion in revenue by 2023, reflecting steady upward trajectory. In 2024, revenue reached 1.55 billion, an 11% increase from 2023. In 2025, annual sales came in at approximately 1.54 billion USD, representing a year-over-year change of less than 0%, meaning they've plateaued after years of growth. Forecast for 2026 also projects sub-zero growth. Tomon employs around 1,500 people, ships roughly 25,000 products daily, and serves over 10 million customers across 18 language markets, and plans to nearly double their physical showroom by 2026. I don't know if this has occurred yet, but this is massive. This is a company that's letting you know they are not f***ing around. So Tomon's continued strength partly reflects their European market position and their own private label brand, Harley Benton, which insulates them from manufacturer pricing pressures. But even they are now projected to decline. So the sources for this is Tomon Financial and ECDB and Music Radar. Now, right here in my backyard, we have Long & McQuade. And from what we can see, they're kind of flying under the radar here. So it says Long & McQuade is a private company with limited public financial disclosure, making hard numbers difficult to verify. What we can establish is that Long & McQuade's e-commerce revenue for 2024 was approximately 61 million USD, down slightly from the prior year, with a growth projected of between 0 to 5% for last year. IBS World identifies Long & McQuade as the dominant player in Canada's musical instrument retail sector, and notes that competition in the segment is moderate and increasing, a signal of market pressure. This is like the biggest company we have here in Canada. They're staying afloat, but we're seeing companies like Steve's Music in Montreal shutting down. I think there was Cosmo Music as well that shut down here in Canada. So the big players, they're doing okay, but to say that they're thriving would be kind of an overstatement at this point. Reverb.com is different than all the other companies in the sense that you and I go on this virtual marketplace and we sell what we have. Basically, very similar to what you would find in your local classified ad, except it's worldwide. And it doesn't seem like they are as affected by everything that's going on in the world compared to the mom and pop shops and some of the bigger companies. If you pull up some of the available data for Reverb.com, it's quite interesting because you're seeing that they outperformed a lot of the bigger guys. So what I could see here is that in their first quarter of 2024, they were outpacing their previous years from 2023, with sales increasing by nearly 50% over the prior period. The UK market alone saw a 13% increase in sales in the first quarter of 2024 compared to the first quarter of 2023. Furthermore, here we have Reverb reported that approximately 917.9 million in gross merchandise sales in 2024, with roughly 80% of platform sales attributed to used gear. Reverb also reported over 30% year-over-year growth in outlet guitar gear sales during quarter 4 of 2023, with sellers' activity significantly increasing pre-pandemic benchmarks. Here's what that actually means. People are buying used gear, not new. They're hunting for deals, not chasing the latest boutique releases. Reverb's own marketing has explicitly pivoted to affordability messaging, the platform growing while new gear retailers stagnate or decline. It is a signal of market frugality, not market enthusiasm. What I could also find is that it seems like the biggest moving gear on there were things like the Line 6 HX Stomp and the carbon copy delay, which I'm like, those are like 10 years old at this point. And those are still like some of the top sellers. So it indicates that people aren't necessarily looking for the latest and greatest, but the products that have really proven themselves over the years. So that's quite interesting. I've also found that apparently the strongest selling thing on Reverb are the mid-range guitar sales. That's where they dominate. And there's also a continued demand for PRS, Fender, Gibsons, etc. The only thing we're not getting out of all the data from Reverb is whether for us as sellers, whether stuff sells quickly and whether it's an easy process. I know that local markets are a nightmare right now, and it's not just me. I'm hearing it from other people that live in other countries. So basically right now, the local market looks like I put something for sale, it sticks there for weeks, and people view the ad, but they don't buy the product. I take it off, I wait a few weeks, I put it back on. This time I adjust the price. Maybe I was too low last time, or maybe I was too high. So depending, I'm going to adjust the price. And the same thing happens again. Shit doesn't move. And why? I don't know. Maybe because people are a little more careful. Maybe there's no demand for what I have. Maybe there's too much of that product right now in the local market. So that means that if I'm selling on Reverb and I'm selling a pedal and there's 100 other people selling the same pedal, what are the odds I'm going to get my asking price? Probably, if I look at what everyone's selling it for, the only way I can sell it is by going down further in terms of price. So it's a race to the bottom. That means that people aren't looking for the latest and greatest. They're just looking for shit that's reliable and stuff that keeps its resale value. Is that wrong? No, but it sure does hurt the wallet when you're the one selling. If you're the one buying, that's awesome. You can still get some fairly good deals. But if you're not into losing too much money on resale, that means either keeping the gear until the market adjusts or you sell your stuff at a loss. Another clear indicator is what is happening to people like myself, the people demonstrating the product. So if someone is selling online, showing the customer what this product does and how it sounds can be time consuming for them because not all of them are doing demos. So sometimes they send the product to people that they want to work with so that those people can do a very good product demonstration that gives you an indication that this might be for you or it might not. Obviously the old model, which is I present the model that I got, the pedal, and I'm telling you that it's a blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to be subtle because I don't want to tell you directly what the circuit is. It's based on a green drive or a rodent style overdrive or whatever bullshit we use to not say it's another clone of this particular circuit. And then I tell you what a tone does and what a drive knob does and what the volume does. That shit is stupid. It's redundant. People are not like completely green when it comes to pedals. They understand what the buttons mean. If the buttons do anything that is not clear, like they called the overdrive girth and they called tone nasal or some like weird verbiage like that, then maybe you need to explain what it is. Otherwise, you say what your gear is. You do the typical anti demo thing where you say, this is my clean tone. And then you get into it. You show the settings and that's it. But typically those kind of demos, what happens is that if we're being honest, I want to buy the pedal that right now is being sold at my local music store. Or maybe it's on the used market in my local classified ads. And I'm like, do I need this? I do a quick search on YouTube. I listen to like 30 seconds of one video. I don't like that. I go to the next one. And then I get that one person that does what I want to hear. And I'm like, cool. I was in there for 30 seconds. I bailed the out. I'm gone. That's what happens through our channels is that they become a reference point. But if we make a 15-minute long video and the person is on an impulse buy, they don't listen to the whole video. They listen to a section and then they get out. And that becomes kind of the model of the whole gear tube is you make the thing, people get a sense of what the pedal can do, and they bail out. So what I'm saying to you is that this old format that used to work, people are fed up with it. So there's already a lack of interest in that format. This means that we have to be smarter as content creators. What I think is going to happen is you're going to see your favorite YouTubers coming to the same realization. Either they're going to adapt or they're not. And if they don't, perhaps they can live with what they have and survive in that way. Or maybe eventually they're going to feel the same way I've been feeling for months now, which is, why am I even doing this? Like, why do I put myself through this? No one's watching. No one gives a shit. No one's subscribing. So why torture myself? I'm just trying to imagine a music store going through the same thing. Like, I'm trying to sell. I'm not making money. People are coming in, buying stuff. But once they bought the thing, I have just as many debts waiting for me, and I'm not seeing as much profit as I used to. Why am I doing this? So there's a lot of us in this whole industry that have to adapt or suffer the consequences. So what does it all mean? We have companies that have to shut down their operation, mom and pop stores that are going out of business, YouTubers who inevitably are suffering burnout because what they've been doing forever doesn't work anymore. There's a change happening. The leading companies are adapting in a way that some people might not be happy with, but it is what it is. You can't really force these companies to just keep making the same thing if that is not sufficing for them anymore. We can do better in terms of content creation. I'm hoping to do that. So this is a podcast format where I get to just shoot the shit for however long the video is. I don't have real constraint because I just have key topics I want to talk about. I'm looking for your opinion, and maybe you have a different lens that you're looking at this through. And in the comments, we get to talk. So if you leave a comment on this video, for sure, I'm going to be responding to it. If we look at it from this perspective, there's a net positive, in my opinion, where companies want to adapt. YouTubers are going to have to adapt. And you as a consumer are going, okay, the old model was cool, but times are changing rapidly. There's so many things happening all at once right now. If we just pretend that we're still in 2020 when things are quite different, all of us who can't adapt are going to become irrelevant. Here's what's next for this channel. I mentioned it in the previous video, but I do intend to do live streams because over here I'm just talking. You're just listening to me talk. Whether it's interesting or not, I don't know. But in a live stream, I get to do this, but at the same time, you get to ask me questions. And I've been pondering how to do the whole gear video thing for a few weeks now. What I'm coming to the conclusion is that maybe live streams would be a cool way to do demos. So let's say, I don't know, I have a topic like the Vox AC15 with the 5 best overdrive. I'm just shooting, for like a concept here. So I could have the 5 pedals, have a camera pointing down at the pedals. I'm showing you what they can do. And then you can say, hey, the hot cake is cool, but what does it sound like when you crank up the distortion all the way? Let's try it, right? So then the demo becomes interactive. Now you're trying the hot cake with a, let's say, a normal humbucker, like a PAF. What does it sound like with a, I don't know, EMG active pickup, or maybe like some kind of down tune 7-string or something like that? I don't have any of that gear yet, but let's say you were asking something like that. Then I could say, cool, I'll go grab a guitar that's close to that. Let's see what it sounds like, or let's hear what it sounds like. Interaction we would have in a format like that. I wouldn't be deciding the direction of the whole video. Maybe some questions would lead down to like some new rabbit hole we haven't thought of before. That's the concept that I'm kind of working on right now. I think that might be more interesting than the typical demo. So if I have something really interesting, if you're subscribed to the channel and I do a community post, then I'm going to ask questions like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this idea for the live stream. What do you think? You can already start to give me ideas on what you want out of that live stream. So whether it's the 5 reasons why you don't like fuzz and how I'm going to change your opinion about it, I could have fuzz and maybe you're like, do you have this other kind of fuzz? I heard about it and maybe I do. And I'll go grab it and I'll put it on the board and go from there. The idea is just to make the demos more fun. And I'm thinking live streams might be a way to do that. If you're a YouTuber and you're like, I fucking love this idea, dude, well, steal it from me. Have fun. Try it on your channel, dude. If we find a new format that can benefit all the channels, fucking let's do it. If not, if you didn't make it this far in the video, maybe you're going to see that I get success out of it. And if you want to rip me off, fucking do it. I don't care. I want everyone to thrive. That's basically it. What I want to do next is talk about, in the next episode, who's going to fix their amps in 20 years? This is another rabbit hole I went down. This is the kind of shit that keeps me up at night. I'm laying in bed and all of a sudden the brain goes, hey, if no one's interested to become an amp repair guy, who's going to repair the amps in 20 years? And then I'm just sitting there going, oh, fuck, that's a good question. Well, it is a good question, but is it the kind of thing I should lose sleep over? Or maybe we should just talk about it in the next episode. So yeah, if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing because I have a lot of ideas, a lot of stuff I want to talk about. Maybe not all of it is relevant, but if you enjoy these kind of topics, consider subscribing. In the meantime, YouTube is telling me you might enjoy these videos, so click on one of them and I'm going to see you in the next one. Cheers.